It's that time. Listen, it's that time. It is that time. It is that time. What time is it? Somebody say roughing it time. That's right. Listen, I need for you to talk back to me and let me know that you hear me. Listen, it's that time. You can say, I'm going to say, what time is it? And you say, roughing it. What time is it? Roughing it. That's right. Listen, we are here to empower. We're here to strengthen. We're here to encourage. We're here to inform. Listen, we're here to make your relationships pop. That's right. Make them work. Make them the kind of relationships that you want to come back to time and time and time again. And so, listen, I am glad to be here with you today. Listen, I am Marcus, therapist and pastor. That's right. Listen, I went to school and I achieved degrees to be able to do what I am doing today to help you. That's right, to empower, strengthen, maximize your relationships. And you know, one of the things that we talk about doing in this space and place, listen, we talk about how to maximize our relationships. But not only are we talking about how to maximize our relationships, listen, we do not come to this space and place by ourselves. And because we don't come to this space and place by ourselves, we come here to learn, to grow. But listen, if you are the only one that's growing, learning in the relationship, that I promise you is going to be a little more challenging. And so how do we maximize this? Listen, we maximize this by making sure that we are inviting people into this space and place. So listen, if you're here with us on YouTube, listen, we want to make sure that you subscribe to our channel. We want to make sure that you're hitting those bell icons. Listen, if you're here with us on Facebook, we thank you for being with us on Facebook. But listen, we want to make sure that you're liking our page. We want to make sure that, listen, you're hitting that bell icon also on Facebook so that you can get those notifications of when we go live. And listen, we want to like, share, and follow. That's right. Listen, we want to like, share, and follow. And so, listen, I am glad to be with you here today. Listen, we're going to be getting into some really good things today as we're talking about relationship baggage. That's right. Listen, we're talking about relationship baggage. And because we're talking about that baggage in relationships, listen, we want to make sure that we understand how to unpack what is happening, what has occurred, what's going on, so that as we are in this space and place for our relationships, listen, we're traveling with a lighter load. We're traveling with a lighter load. And so, listen, if you're here with me, listen, on YouTube, or you're with me here on Facebook, in real time, you can ask questions. And I will see those questions and be able to respond to you so that I can answer whatever it is that you're asking as it pertains to the message, as it pertains to what we are discussing in the here and now. And so, listen, so we want to go ahead and get started today. Now, you know, I always like to start off with a good quote. Sometimes it's a spiritual quote. Sometimes it's just a quote as it relates to the subject matter. And so here, when you bring this up, you notice now, says, my therapist has helped me to learn to understand that if you don't unpack your own emotional baggage, it's no longer baggage, it's dead weight. Now, listen, I really like that because I don't care who you are, male or female. I don't care who you are. Listen, save or not save, a Christian or someone of any other spiritual practices. Listen, I don't care if you're old or you're young. I don't care where you may be from geographically. I don't care whether it is national or international in terms of your origin. What I'm telling you is that everybody in any relationship brings baggage. Let me just say it again. Listen, anybody that you're in relationship with has some baggage, anybody that you're in relationship with means that you are bringing baggage. And because that is what's occurring, listen, we need to understand, how do we eliminate this from being dead weight? How do we unpack these things so that we're traveling with a lighter load? And so here, listen, let us just go ahead and begin to just really dive into this. Now, I have a biblical passage that I want to bring up. Here in Proverbs 23, verse 7, in the Passion translation, it says, "For as he thinks within himself, so is he." Now, if you're listening to this, listen, you are hearing me, but if you're watching this, you can see this passage that I brought up, as well as other slides that I would be bringing up during this time. And so here, notice now, it says, "For as he thinks in himself, so is he." Listen, do you understand how you think at a core level? Now, we're talking about relationships, and we're going to get into some common core misbeliefs that happens in relationships. But these are things that often people bring to the table. Do you understand how you think at a core level? What are the kind of convictions that you bring to the table? I would tell you that there are some core beliefs that you are aware of. There are some core beliefs that, listen, you don't know exactly how you think or how you feel or how you are wired in such a way until sometimes circumstances and situations and relationship dynamics begin to unravel, begin to unfold. They begin to reveal these things about you and I. And this is why you and I can be in a relationship with someone that's a good friend, and we can be in a relationship with them for years. And all of a sudden, something comes up years into the relationship. And it can be sometimes significant. It can be sometimes devastating because something happened, something transpired, and it hit a core. It hit a nerve. And we weren't really sure why we felt the way we felt or why we thought the way that we thought. And the reality is that that was a real core area that was touched, that was sometimes tampered by that other person. And so therefore, you and I understanding that there's this surface part of us, but then there's a core part of us. And here it says that, listen, as you think according to the core part, that kind of what some people would call that subconscious thinking, that deep level kind of beneath the layer thinking, is what really begins to make a difference for relationships. So notice now, all actions start as a belief. So when a person like you and I have core beliefs, listen, there are these assumptions about how we think things should go or how we think things should be, or we think how a relationship should flow. That when we understand that there are these core beliefs, these assumptions, that therefore, when these core beliefs begin to not flow the way that we believe, or may I say, not the core beliefs, but when the reality hits and these things are not in sync with my core beliefs, these convictions, these assumptions that I have about life and how relationships will work, I promise you it will not only impact the relationship at hand, but listen, it can impact your overall happiness. And so therefore, this is why it's important that you and I understand that these core beliefs are so vital. Listen, these core beliefs are so vital that you and I understand them to whatever degree that we can really unravel them as much as possible. And so sometimes just examining some of our preconceived notions may end up, listen, giving you and I the kind of insight that helps us have better relationships with other people. One of the things that I will do in working with couples, especially premarital couples, one of the assignments that I would do at times in working with them is talk about their expectations going into this marriage. And when I began to really talk to them about expectations, and one of the assignments is to actually have them write out expectations in these different areas. It's always amazing when the person, now listen, they could have dated for a long time. They could have been engaged for years. And or especially if they've known each other even before they entered into this kind of dating relationship. And they feel like, oh, I really know this person. And all of a sudden, this assignment begins to unveil expectations that the other person may have. Oh, sometimes they're bewildered. They're like, where is this coming? What? There's some things that they predicted. And then the other things they didn't predict. And I'm saying that, listen, I don't care if it is a dating relationship or maybe it's with a colleague, it's in a professional relationship. And although you assume, that's right, you assume that, listen, because we've been sometimes working at the same place, or sometimes we have the same degrees, or sometimes we have worked in this industry, maybe not even at the same place, but in this industry, that we assume that therefore you are coming to the table with a certain amount of knowledge and information. Sometimes we do ourselves a disservice and we begin to really cause problems in professional relationships because we haven't really even examined some of our own core beliefs as it may relate to a career. And so here, when we pull up this next slide, and this is what we were talking about last week. We were talking about relationship baggage, and we began to talk about why baggage matters. We began to talk about why baggage matters. Because the reality is, if you are here today, obviously you have deemed this to be important. But I promise you that there are others that you are in relationship with that do not even understand the concept of relationship baggage, or even if they do understand, they have very little knowledge about it, and they just do not understand how much luggage they are carrying around. And so sometimes when you begin to talk about unraveling, unpacking this baggage, people will sometimes assume, going back to core beliefs, well, I've been in this relationship for a long time. I don't really need this information. This really won't be helpful. Or some people that may feel like even in a new relationship, but because I've had, some degree of time in working with you, that it says, hey, well, we haven't been in this relationship long enough to really have any baggage. But the reality is that as long as you and I have been living on this earth, you and I have baggage. Now, whether we want to accept the truth to that, whether we want to recognize the facts surrounding it, is a whole nother discussion, because maybe we're in denial about some things. And that's the reason why we don't really sometimes want to really delve into, pry into, really open up that luggage, because sometimes we're a little maybe afraid, a little fearful, maybe even a little nervous about what are we really going to find. Will I be able to even stand with what I see? And so the reality is that by the time you and I are adults, we are inevitably carrying some sort of emotional baggage with us. The longer that you have been living means the longer that you've had the opportunity to really collect more items in your luggage. And therefore, this is why when we're talking about why is it important, because you and I need to understand that we've collected some things along the way simply because we've been hurt, simply because, listen, we've been satisfied. Sometimes baggage is really about the fact that I've been so satisfied. You know those persons that have kind of had the silver spoon in their mouth, or maybe they've had the red carpet treatment. And so therefore, their satisfaction in life has put baggage, that's right, on their back. And so now they come into a relationship with other assumptions about how this should go because of how things have gone in the past. And so it doesn't always mean that it's something negative or something bad. It can be positive experiences that also can turn into luggage because we bring that positivity, which can be good, but sometimes we bring the expectations of how that the positivity happened in the past into new relationships. And we think, well, hey, this is going to happen the same way because this is how such and such treated me in a friendship. This is how my last colleague respected me in a relationship. And so we come into this dynamic having experiences, good, bad, or ugly, or sometimes none at all. And so we don't really know what to expect. And even that in and of itself can be baggage because the reality is that it comes with preconceived ideas, preconceived notions, and sometimes past experiences that all become insulated and wrapped into a package that now we begin to bring to the table with expectations and thoughts, and more importantly, beliefs and sometimes convictions about how things should go, will go, need to go. And when those things are lying there in our luggage, it can create all kinds of problems when you and I enter into a relationship with another individual. Now, once again, listen, if you have questions, listen, you can put those questions here on YouTube. You can put those on Facebook. I'm here to be able to answer the questions in the moment. All right, so listen, let's begin to look at this whole idea about core beliefs. What's relationship baggage? Now, if you remember, when we talk about this whole idea surrounding what's baggage, what's relationship baggage, we began to define this last week. And I want to be able to define this again. We defined it now. I was just kind of speaking a little bit about it, but let me just tell you how we defined it. It says the difficult or painful things we've gone through in past relationships that tend to follow us in future relationships. It's often a collection of artifacts from past experiences. And so today, here where I want to be able to talk to you about, and this is one of the things that we had mentioned last week. We said that when it comes to relationship baggage, that one of the pieces of luggage that we have in our relationship baggage bag, one of the things that we have is what we call here core beliefs. And we said that, listen, when you talk about core beliefs, they're core beliefs that I have about myself, the core beliefs that I have about relationships, core beliefs that I have about people. And so the reality is that when you and I talk about core beliefs, they're not just core beliefs in one area pertaining to just one particular thing. But listen, we have core beliefs about a lot of different things that sometimes are unbeknownst to us. And so therefore, this is why you and I have to be able to recognize not only do we have core beliefs, but sometimes we've got to go dig those things up to really look at them for what they're worth. And so when we are talking about core beliefs, listen, here's one of the ways in which we help define them. Core beliefs are the central ideas that we have about ourselves, we have about others, and we have about the world. These core beliefs tend to act like a lens. When you see me with my glasses, right? With my glasses, it helps for me to be able to look through my prescription to be able to see afar off. If things are close, I don't need my glasses. But when things are far off, I need my glasses to be able to see what those letters are, what those numbers are, what those signs are. And so when you talk about core beliefs, listen, they're the lens by which you and I look through. And so, listen, if my glasses are a little foggy, listen, I've got to take time out to clean them up so that I can see clearly. If my glasses are a little dirty, I've got to wipe them off so that I can see clearly. And our core beliefs are sometimes like glasses. Listen, they're dingy, they're foggy, sometimes they're dirty. And the reality is that we're looking through them and we don't even know how dingy our core beliefs can become. And then sometimes when you wear glasses, if you're not a person that wears glasses, that you can wear your glasses so long that your eyes will adjust to kind of what can be this dinginess about your glasses, and you can continue to see. And somebody would say, man, your glasses look a little dingy, and then you take them off, you're like, wow, yeah, they really do. But you hadn't really noticed that because your eyes had adjusted to the type of clarity or lack of clarity that your glasses were giving you. And so therefore you weren't even aware of how dingy they were until somebody brought it to your attention. And sometimes this is what core beliefs are like. Listen, there are these core beliefs, listen, that we may have about a situation. Listen, they may help inform how we feel and why we feel the way that we feel. Listen, they will impact how we behave. Listen, if I say something to you that, listen, is disrespectful, even if my intentions was to say something that was not disrespectful, if your interpretation of what I said was disrespectful, listen, it will literally change how you are interacting with me. A good example is President Nixon. Now, some of you may be too old. Some of you may be too young to remember President Nixon. But President Nixon was one of our presidents. I think he was back in the 70s. And the reality is that when you and I see this sign, or Matt, let me just say it this way. When you and I see this sign, this is the peace sign for what we here in America. Let me just say that. There may be some people watching this internationally. And so here in America, if you do this, it's the peace sign. Some people say it means deuces, right? If I do it like this, right? 2 fingers instead of just, 4 fingers, instead of just 2. And so President Nixon was the type that would often talk with his hands, and he would often do his hands like this and have the peace sign, right? Well, what some of you may not know is that if you turn this, right, and you do this in Germany, it's like giving somebody the middle finger in America. President Nixon didn't know that when he was speaking in Germany and doing this, and all of a sudden the crowd went ballistic. This is a true story. They literally had to pack him up, rush him off stage because he kept doing this, not understanding what he was communicating. And they literally had to put him in his limo, right? Get him away from the crowd because they interpreted his motions to be, you're flipping me off. And how many times is it that sometimes we've been in situations and conversations and exchanges, and we felt like, well, when the person did this or they said that this was what they were trying to do. In all honesty, that isn't what was happening at all. But because my core beliefs only gave me this amount of information, instead of giving me this amount of information, it limited my interpretation of what was the exchange in that dynamic. And so therefore, this is why you and I having core beliefs are good, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they're just downright so far off that we don't know how bad they are until either somebody tells us or something begins to happen, and we have to begin to really look into these core beliefs. And so therefore, core belief shapes how we see the world, whether we're looking through clear lenses, tainted lenses, or listen, some of us are looking through, listen, such a dark lens that we don't know how off our core beliefs really are. And so these core beliefs are things that are hidden beneath the surface. And so it takes a little work to sometimes really dig and to really unearth these core beliefs. And so therefore, listen, here's what I need for you to understand. Here's some other facts about core beliefs. Listen, people are not born with core beliefs, they are learned. So this is why when you understand that the relationships that you have come from, in whatever context that you were raised, whether it was with your biological parents, it was with your grandparents, maybe it was in a foster home, you were raised with maybe some other group of people. The reality is that a lot of your core beliefs have been imparted to you. Listen, whether it was how you were shaped and formed through those that you grew up around, or listen, it was through the movies you watched, through the books that you read. We have all along the years gathered beliefs about ourselves and about the world and about relationships that aren't as accurate as they were presented. And so therefore, core beliefs are not things that we're born with. They're things that we learn. Core beliefs usually, like I said, develop in childhood. And here's the thing. We sometimes develop beliefs because they were mechanisms that were good, that were in their intentions, they were good to protect us. But in all honesty, listen, they were birthed during stressful and traumatic periods in our lifetime. You ever had the experience of talking to somebody, sharing your heart, and then all of a sudden that information gets out? You can feel devastated. And the core belief that you can develop around that is never ever trust anybody. And although it's good in its intentions because it's set up to really protect you, the reality is that if you don't get past that hurdle of the hurt and pain of somebody having shared some confidential information so that you are able to get back into another relationship and you can be vulnerable and you can begin to share your heart, the reality is that that kind of core belief about not trusting anyone will, listen, it will cause toxic beliefs about people and relationships, and it will eventually harm you instead of help you. Listen, there are negative core beliefs that are not necessarily true, even though they feel true. Listen, there are negative core beliefs that are not necessarily true, but they feel true. Core beliefs tend to be rigid and long-standing. However, they can be changed. And so I'm saying to you that, listen, when you begin to recognize that there's some core beliefs that you have that are not good, that are not helpful, that they are not germane to a fulfilling relationship. Listen, I don't care whether we're talking about family, we're talking about marriage, or listen, we're talking about friendships, or we're talking about a professional relationship. The reality is that if you and I discover this core belief really doesn't serve me well, this core belief doesn't really work to my good, I've got to do the work to really believe something different, but to believe it at a core. And let me tell you, that takes work. That takes work. Listen, if you have had your trust affected to the point where, listen, I'm not talking about where it made you a little hesitant. I'm not talking about where it made you just a little cautious. We should all have that as a protective mechanism. That's a healthy trust process. But if it has caused so much pain and devastation to the point, listen, that you don't trust anybody, that's a sick core misbelief. It's sick. And let me tell you, it will do you more harm over the years than it will do you good. And the reality is that some people are willing to live with the pain that causes and that creates than to do the work that it takes to be able to have a healthy trust in life and with people. Now, once again, listen, if you have questions, you can put those questions right here on the comment section on YouTube or on Facebook. And listen, I'm glad to be able to answer questions as it is germane to what it is that we are discussing right now. And so listen, I want to talk about just some common misbeliefs that happen in relationships across the board. Now remember, these common core misbeliefs, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, listen, whether it is family, doesn't matter. These are common misbeliefs that happen across the board. And so let me bring these up for you. So here, if you look here on the screen, notice it says relationships should follow a specific pattern. This is a common misbelief that people have about relationships. Listen, that relationships should follow a specific pattern. Now, listen, I believe that there are guidelines to relationships. I believe that there's structures to relationship. But let me tell you, not all relationships follow the exact same pattern. And what happens is that sometimes when we get caught up in the pattern and we're not caught up in the principle or the structure or the key concept for that relationship to flow well and for there to be a healthy exchange and for there to be good stability within that relationship, if we're just simply looking at the pattern, then let me tell you, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people try to follow a pattern and say, well, if this is how, you had a good friendship, this is what you did to have a good friendship, then I'm going to do the exact same thing. And they miscalculate the fact that there were elements that the other person brought to the table that is not true about every relationship that you're walking into. There's a certain level of maturity that they may bring. There's a certain level of knowledge and information that they may bring. And so therefore they are a little more advanced. They may be a little more informed. And so I can't just expect that, hey, I met this person, we clicked well, things just really just kind of took off. I can't expect that now all of a sudden all of my friendships are going to follow that same pattern. There were some specifics about this relationship that really made this pop, where this one has the same potential. Listen, this one has the same potential, but it may take a different pace. It may take a little more work. Listen, it may take a little more exchange, but we can still get to the same destination. But if we're not willing to assess the differences and understand the dynamics that play here versus that's playing there, then we may come expecting this to look just like that and not understand why this had the kind of flow, why this had the kind of quickness, and why this one may take a little time. I've seen people, listen, where they had good friends in let's say, at a particular job, and then they jump to another job for whatever reason, and they're expecting that all of a sudden I'm going to go into this space and things are just going to automatically kind of be the same way. Doesn't mean it doesn't have potential, but I may need to do a little more work to bring the same kind of results. And so, listen, if you're only looking for the pattern and you don't understand the concepts, you don't understand the principles, you don't understand the structure, then you can very well have a misbelief about relationships because you're just looking at patterns and you're not understanding the undergirding structure and principles that make this work. Let me bring up this next one. Let me look at this next one. Notice now. It says healthy relationships don't require effort. Healthy relationships don't require effort. I can't tell you how many times I have seen this across the board. Whether you're talking about the person that's looking for their spouse and they're like, say, this is my soulmate, or you're talking about the person that's at school or in some other environment and they're looking for a good friend, or you're talking about the person that's, listen, in a work environment and they're looking for a good colleague that they can really click with. I'm telling you, across the board, I have seen this misbelief be applied to the various relationships across the spectrum. And the reality is that healthy relationships require effort, they require hard work, and sometimes they require sacrifice. Listen, it's like your body. If you want to be in great shape, you're going to have to work out regularly. If you want to keep your relationships, listen, in a great space, then listen, it's going to require work. And here's the thing, sometimes like with a workout, we've worked hard to get our bodies and to get our health to a certain place. And then we want to kind of, take it easy. We want to kind of say, well, you know what? I've worked so hard now I can kind of, pull it back a few notches. And all of a sudden over time, maybe not as quickly, but over time, we start noticing that now we're getting back out of shape. And sometimes it may feel like it just came up out of nowhere or it happened so quickly. The reality is that we quit doing the work. And it's the same way in any good relationship, that if you want to keep that relationship healthy, you want to keep that relationship on a good vibe, you want to keep that relationship in a good flow, whether we're talking about you as a parent with your children, or we're talking about you as a professional with your colleagues. It does not happen automatically. And sometimes there are these spiritual beliefs that we have about, well, if it's God ordained, then I don't have to do all this work. If this is God's will, I don't have to do all this work. And I'm telling you that from a biblical, scriptural standpoint, scriptures don't support that. We've developed beliefs around it, but it's not supported by scripture. And so therefore, listen, healthy relationships do require effort. Sometimes when we've had this kind of misbelief, good potential relationships get overlooked because we don't see the potentiality in the relationship because we're looking at the work. And because we're looking at the work, we don't see the greater good that can happen because we're thinking, if this was healthy, I shouldn't have to do as much work. Sometimes, listen, we're getting into relationship after relationship simply because we're looking for somebody to come that's already developed. We're looking for somebody to come that's already perfected. They're already mature. Listen, they already have the goods. And because we're looking for somebody to already come equipped to the table, we don't see the potential that if we took some more time and just worked with what we had, that which we envision is exactly what can be the outcome. And I'm telling you, listen, there are some people that, listen, they're lonely, and there are some people that are alone. There are some people, listen, that are dissatisfied simply because they do not understand that the relationship that you desire, the level at which you desire that relationship to become, will require work to get there. The same way that it required that work for your body to get to where it is, listen, whether you work or not work, is a result of what has or hasn't happened. And it's a misbelief to think that healthy relationships come automatically and don't require work. Let me bring up this next one to you. Let's look at this next one. Relationships can bring you true happiness. Relationships can bring you true happiness. And here's what I'm telling you. That is a misbelief. Now, do we want relationships to add to our happiness? Do we want relationships to serve as a place of comfort and support? Oh, sure. Do we want to have people in our lives that are able to help us in times of need, and they're able to speak to us in ways that really encourage and build up our confidence and help add to our when I am trying to have the relationship to bring that to me, and I don't have that within my own arsenal, I don't have that at my own table, I'm looking for a relationship to do something it was never designed to accomplish. The happiness that we're often looking outwardly is because we are looking through, once again, a foggy set of lens. And the reality is that that happiness is first found within us, so that when others are adding to it, they can do just that. They can add and not, listen, supply. They are to be a complement. They are not to be the nourishment. They are to be a supplement. Listen, they are not to be the core. And so therefore, listen, when this happens, this is often when people are looking more to others and they set themselves up for all types of dissatisfaction, hurt, and pain, which sometimes lead to other core beliefs about, well, you know what, you can't trust people, you know, people won't be there, people can't love you, and it just can lead to all types of just sometimes, like I say, from misbelief all the way to toxic beliefs, because we fail to recognize that family members, our spouses, friends, colleagues, listen, are not responsible for our happiness. And it will harm us and sometimes give us wrong core beliefs about people and relationships when we don't understand this. And it may be that, listen, if this is what you're doing to be able to search and to find persons that you think are of quality and of wholesomeness to be able to be in your life, listen, you can be on an endless search, because the problem is not outward. The problem is inward. Here's my last one for this time. Let's bring this up. Friends, or a friend, a spouse, a colleague should always know what you want, feel, or think. A friend, a spouse, a colleague should always know what you want, feel, or think. Now, let me just tell you, I've heard this across the board, and that's why I use all of those different particular categories. Because here's what people will say. I expected him or her to know that I wanted, quote, that thing. I expected him or her to know me better by now. I want him, or I want to tell him or her what I think. No, I'm sorry, let me say it this way. I won't tell her or him what I think. I'm sure she or he already knows. And what happens is that over time, this is one of those misbeliefs that we think that somebody who really knows us shouldn't once again require us to have to communicate as much. That somebody who really gets us, right, doesn't require us to have to explain and to have to give them the information. Now, granted, over time, yes, somebody that has spent enough significant time with you and I, yes, they will understand certain things about us, certain pet peeves, and they will get certain things about us. That happens over time. But to think that somehow they're going to always have this, that there's going to be situations and scenarios in which I just walk in the room and they're just going to know what's wrong. They're going to know what to do. They're going to know what to say. And I'm looking for somebody who can do just that. I'm telling you, it can set you and I up for the kind of beliefs that say us. People can't meet my needs. People don't love me the way that I need to be loved. People don't care about me the way that I believe that I've earned the right to be cared for. All these kind of things that can really show up, especially when a crisis hit, especially when I'm stressed, especially when things are not going my way, and especially if I've had a series of them. You know, something went bad at work. Something happened on the way home. And now I'm at home and I'm expecting these family members to really just kind of know how to just kind of take all that off my shoulders, suck all the stress out of my veins, and just know how to speak and care for me so that now I'm just kind of, floating on the clouds. It sounds good. Sounds like something that we would read in a novel. Sounds like a fairy tale ending. It sounds like a good movie script, but it's not reality. Let me say it again. It's not reality. And so therefore, when you and I do not understand that these persons that are in our lives were never designed to read our minds, they were never designed to have to be omnipotent, all-powerful, omniscient, all-knowing. That they were never designed in that fashion. And so therefore, healthy relationships depend on parties being able to comfortably communicate their feelings, their thoughts, their fears, and their preferences to each other. And sometimes you have to do this on several occasions. Sometimes you have to do this again and again and again because we're dealing with humans, not robots. We're dealing with people, not personal computers. It's not like you can put in this program one time and bam, the computer got it. The reality is we're talking about humans that sometimes require the kind of time and attention to help cultivate beyond these beliefs, these misbeliefs themselves. If you want your needs fulfilled, you're going to have to communicate them. In your head, you might think that your colleague, your family member, the person that loves you so much, your BFF, knows exactly what you want and isn't willing to give it to you, when in reality, they want to, but they just don't know unless it's communicated. And I'm saying to you that sometimes these things are happening because in our core beliefs about relationships, these are the kind of beliefs that we have that are not germane to reality. They're not germane to the truth about how relationships work. And if you and I are not willing to really examine our core beliefs, not really examine these assumptions that we have, we're not really willing to examine some of these things that have plagued us, then I would tell you that you and I are set up for more failures than success. more sadness than happiness, more disappointments than what you and I should embrace and you and I should experience. And so listen, we're unpacking the luggage. We're unpacking the luggage. And today, listen, we have unpacked, today we have unpacked some core beliefs. Now, obviously, I've not delved into the bag of all core beliefs, but I've delved into the bag of some common core misbeliefs. And so listen, I want you to know that sometimes we just got to do the work to be able to unpack our luggage. But I promise you, you can live lighter and life can be a little more fulfilling because you do the work on the preventive end. But the reality is that sometimes it's not until something bad, devastating happens that we begin to do the work on the reactive end. Now listen, I want to thank you so much for being here with us here at RUFF'N IT. But listen, I want to ask you that you would partner with us, that you would partner with us here at RUFF'N IT. I'm asking that you would partner with RUFF'N IT. Now listen, you may ask, what does that partnership look like? And this is where I'm saying financially, can you partner with us? So listen, you can partner with us through the Cash App, LifeEmpowermentCh. You can partner with us on PayPal at LEC at let-god.org. Listen, you can partner with us by sending a check or money order to LifeEmpowermentCh, P.O. Box 7958, Moreno Valley, California 92552. But I'm just asking that however you may decide to partner with us, I'm just asking that you would partner with us so that we can continue to bring to you the kind of information, the kind of knowledge, the kind of insight that really helps to move the needle in your relationship. And so I thank you for being with us today. Listen, I thank you that you have gotten some things out of this time. And I hope that, listen, this will continue to be an impacting time RUFF'N IT. And so listen, with that being said, I'm going to look forward to seeing you again next Thursday as we begin to even unpack this a little more about unpacking the luggage in our relationships. That's right, unpacking the baggage, because all of us bring it. The question is, do you know what's in your luggage? And so listen, I thank you. I appreciate you. God bless you. And I believe God's best for all your relationships so that they bring the kind of fulfillment that makes you want to return back to them again and again. God bless you, and we will see you again on RUFF'N IT.